Hello and welcome to this evening's Second Funds Exam Prep Bootcamp. My name is Sam Albanese and I'm going to be your basically your instructor for this evening. Because this is a rather long exam, 30 questions, and there's a lot of questions and everything else, I strongly recommend that you have pencil and paper with you to mark things down. And I will, as we answer the questions, I will also give you the reference. In other words, where you will find. So not only will I give you the correct answer, but I'm also going to give you the opportunity to take a look at the book. So I'm going to refer back to the book and say section such and such, whatever. So I strongly recommend you have something in your hands that you can, paper, you can write things down, so that way you can refer to it after the session. Obviously, I'll try to answer any questions along the way as they come along. And don't forget that you can always go to your website and take a look at the email address that's there, and you're welcome to email me any of those any of the questions, and I'll be happy to answer them usually within 24 to 48 hours. Okay, so let's start. Now, the way we've always done these, I put it on and then I give you a moment to sort of read it on your own, so you have an idea what you're looking at. Then I will turn around and read it again, give you a summary, and then of course I'll give you the answers, give you my rationale as to why it is the answer that it is. Okay, so let's proceed first of all with the first one, and we've got Chantal's assets and liabilities. So I'll give you a moment just to take a quick look at it, and then, like I said, I will answer the question and give you my rationale as well. So let's go forward. Okay, so what we've got here is Chantal, and she has a house that's worth $425,000. However, she has a $200,000 mortgage, so there's the liability, so to speak. The car is worth $20,000, but she still owes $8,000 on that. She has a $500,000 whole life insurance policy with a cash surrender value of $30,000, $5,000 in RSP money, $15,000 in TFSA, $3,000 in a bank account. She also owes $10,000 on her line of credit, which has a limit of $25,000. What is Chantal's net worth? So when you look at a net worth, okay, the basically what net worth is, your assets minus, of course, your liabilities. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is take a look at what are the actual assets that she has. Okay, and so when you look at that, you see that the asset that she has is $425,000 house. Of course, she has a car that's worth $20,000, and she's got cash in the bank. Or rather, the insurance policy for $30,000. She's got $50,000 in RSPs, $15,000 in TFSA, and $3,000 in the bank. So when you add up all those assets, you come out with $543,000 is her asset. However, as I said, the statement of net worth statement is really assets minus liabilities. So now we know that the assets here are $543,000, but we now also have to look at the liabilities. And of course, she has $200,000 mortgage, $8,000 car loan, $10,000 that she still owes on her line of credit. So if you add all those numbers, of course, you get $218,000. So the $543,000 in assets minus $218,000 in liabilities basically generates assets minus liability. The correct answer is $325,000. Okay, so net worth statement is an important statement for a client because it basically says that if that person liquidated this, so basically if Chantal said, okay, I'm out of here, I'm going to liquidate everything I got, so on a pre-tax basis, how much money will I have? Well, what you're going to have is assets minus liabilities. So in this case here, Chantal can basically walk away with $325,000 in her pocket. Of course, you have to pay tax on this stuff, but that's, like I said, this is all before tax. So when you're doing a net worth statement, it's always before tax. Okay, and so what you're going to find is that the rationale on that for that particular section is chapter 4. So chapter 4 and it's section 1.3. Is where they talk about net worth statements, things of that nature there. So please avail yourself of that information. So let's go to question 2 rather, and we've got Arnold. So once again, I'm going to give you a moment to read the material on your own. Okay, so we've got Arnold. He's self-employed. He's a truck driver, 20 years experience. He's looking to invest for his life savings, and he's looking at segregated funds because he likes the idea of the credit protection, and of course the ability to designate specific beneficiaries, which means, of course, it bypasses the probate and everything. Okay? So, however, his line of work, of course, he knows that there's accidents can happen, and he would like to ensure that his family will not receive less. That's important. Not receive less than what he invested if he were to die unexpectedly. So he has been investing for the last 2 decades and has seen a few market cycles during that time. Arnold's investment goals are long-term, so not a short-term investor, long-term investor, and he's not worried about short-term fluctuations. Okay, so he keeps a close eye on fees. He wants an investment option that is not too costly or prohibitive. What type of segregated fund guarantees would you recommend? So if you remember, we said that all segregated funds must have a 75%, basically a death benefit guarantee of 75% and 75% on maturity. So as he says, he's not too concerned about the investment side. He's used to cycles, sort of up, down, and all that sort of stuff there. His real concern really seems to me, anyways, from this question, is he wants to make sure that his family does not receive less than the investment that he's actually made if he unexpectedly passed away. So then the answer in that case is 100% death benefit guarantee and a 75% maturity guarantee. Because like I said, he knows about markets. He knows markets go up. He knows markets go down, So he's prepared to take, because it is a long-term type of thing, he's prepared to take some risk and everything. So really, when you look at a 75% guarantee, what you're really only risking is 25%. The rest of it is guaranteed. However, he made it very, very clear. Look, if I die, I want to make sure that my family gets every dime that I put into this thing here. So therefore, the only way that can happen is 100% guarantee on death benefit and a 75% guarantee on maturity. So if you go to Chapter 5, Section 2.3, that will give you the information that we're looking for in terms of how to protect your assets, you might say, upon death, and how to minimize your losses on maturity. So this is a perfect way: 100% death benefit guarantee and 75% maturity guarantee. So that is discussed quite extensively in Chapter 5, Section 2.3. So now we've got question 3, and it's Johnson. So once again, I'll give you a few moments just to read that on your own. Okay, so what we've got here is Johnson. He has a group RRSP at work, obviously, and his employer and also he and his employer contribute 5% of his earnings. Okay, so he's now planning to quit his job and move to another employer who wants to move on, basically. So Johnson wonders whether his group RRSP has vested and whether his ownership rights on the employer's contribution and the growth and everything are vested. In other words, does he own this money? So in a group RRSP, the issue really is that all monies are vested immediately. If you notice that sometimes when you're looking at a DPSP or you're looking at defined benefit, defined contribution, some companies will put a vesting provision. And in Ontario, for example, I'm sure it's the same in other provinces, you have a 2-year maximum vesting. In other words, after 2 years, both the employer's money and the employee's money are vested. But in terms of a group RSP, it's vested. Vested means ownership, Abdul. The question of the audience was, so what does vested mean? It means ownership. In other words, what we're saying is, if you notice that the contributions are 5%. So let's assume, for argument's sake, that the employer puts in 2.5 and the employee puts in 2.5. Okay, so the fact that it's vested, that means that Johnson moves to another employer, both the employer and the employee money moves with him. Under normal circumstances, if you move within 2 years, what happens is your money is obviously vested. In other words, your money, you can take that with you, but your employer's money is not available. Okay, the employer money stays in the pool, but in a group RRSP, it's vested immediately. So that means that both your employer's money and your money, even if you quit, 3 weeks later, so to speak, I know I'm exaggerating, but basically anytime you quit, the money belongs to you. So both the employer and the employee money. Whereas the defined benefit and defined contribution and the DPSPs, some employers will say, no, the first 2 years, if you leave me the first 2 years, you can take your money with you at best, but my contribution, you leave it behind. And after 2 years, of course, you can take it all. In other words, both the employer and the employee money is yours. But in the first 2 years, your money is yours, but the employer money remains with the employer. And that's what vesting means. In a group RSP, there is no such thing as a 2-year benefit, vesting period. In a group RSP, it vests immediately. Okay, so therefore, whatever your employer is putting in, if he's putting in $1,000, and you're putting in $1,000, and you move, and even though you move before the 2 years are up, the $2,000 goes with you, not just the $1,000 which you put in, but also your employer's contribution. So that is very well discussed in Chapter 8. Okay, Chapter 8, 2.2. So Chapter 8, 2.2 talks about group RSP. Strongly recommend that you make a note of that, because there usually is a question on the cert exam as well as the provincial exam about group RSPs. Okay, so make sure you read that particular section. So Chapter 8, Section 2.2 is what you need to look at. I hope that was clear. Question 4, and we've got Donald. Okay, so once again, I'll give you a few moments to read that. Okay? Okay, so what we've got is Donald is a member of a defined contribution pension plan. Okay, defined contribution pension plan. Now remember, when we discussed the defined contribution pension plan, when we did this session, okay, last Wednesday, we did say that one of the problems with the defined contribution plan is that the employee doesn't know what he's going to get at the other end, versus the defined benefit pension plan, which of course you know what you're going to get at age 65, let's say. But defined contribution, you don't know. That's one of the disadvantages of the defined contribution pension plan. So in this case here, he's been working for this employer for 12 years. So he recently accepted a job with a new employer, whom Donald made sure also has a defined contribution pension plan. He is unsure of his options regarding the $60,000 that he has accumulated in his current defined contribution pension plan. Now remember, the fact that he's been there for 12 years, that means that the employer's money and his money is vested. Okay, so that means all the money. So that $60,000 may be a combination of his employer's money as well as his own money, along of course with the earnings. So the question here is, what is not? Note the word not. What is not an option available to Donald? Okay, and so what is not basically is he cannot transfer the money to an RRSP. One of the things you have to remember about a company-sponsored pension plan, whether it be defined contribution or whether it be defined benefit, is that the money is locked in. An RRSP is not locked in. In other words, you can cancel an RRSP anytime you want to get your money out of it, and that's it. In a defined contribution plan and defined benefit plan, you cannot cancel it. All you can simply do is transfer it into another plan. And so therefore, you cannot put in locked in money, which is defined contribution money, and defined benefit pension is locked in money, into an non-locked in vehicle. An RRSP is a non-locked in vehicle. So the two do not mix, basically. So what he cannot do is move his company-sponsored pension plan to his own personal RRSP. So that means that he can leave the money with the current DCPP. In other words, he can leave it with his current employer if that's what he wants. he can certainly transfer the money to the new employer, because the new employer, remember, has a defined contribution pension plan. So he made sure of that. So he can certainly roll it over to his new employer. Or if he doesn't like either one of those, he can transfer the money into a locked-in retirement account, LIRA. You can always move your money to your employer or leave it with your current employer. But the LIRA, if you are younger than 55, you must move your money to a LIRA. So unless you move the money to leave it to your current employer, or you move the money to a new employer, then the money can only go into a LIRA. So notice that the LIRA is locked in, you see, so you can therefore leave the money into a locked-in retirement account. You cannot touch the money until you're 55 or older. You can certainly leave the money all the way to age 75 in a LIRA. 71, I said 75, so age 71 into a LIRA. But most certainly, from age 55 to 71, if you need money, you can then start taking money out in an annuity format, basically, okay? But you cannot put the money into your registered retirement savings plan because an RRSP is not locked in. So because this is a locked-in vehicle, it must stay in a locked-in vehicle all the way through. So there's no exception to that. That again is covered on Chapter 8. You notice Chapter 8 shows up a lot. So Chapter 8, Section I.2 is where you find information about these kind of situations, what's not locked in, and so on. What happens if he wants to cash in the money right now? No, he can't. As I said, a question on the audience was, what if he wants to cash in his DCP? He cannot cash it in. This is designed to give him a lifetime pension. He can cash in an RRSP anytime he wants because the money's not locked in. But this money, that's why we say, Bill, that we say that the money is locked in. You cannot cash this in, period. You must leave the money there. And from age 55, you can begin to take out money month by month, for example, in other words, an annuity, but you can never, ever cash it in. So you cannot get his hands on the $60,000 in one lump sum. If that $60,000 was in an RRSP, most certainly you could take it because I say RRSPs are not locked in. But the defined benefit plans, defined contribution pension plans are locked in money. And so therefore you cannot take out as a lump sum. It must stay as a monthly income, which can start as early as 55, but can be deferred anytime up to age 71. At 71, you must start taking money out. But once again, you cannot take out a lump sum. You can only take out on a monthly basis because it's designed to give you an income for the rest of your life. So when you look at the LIRA there, you see the L. The L stands for two things. It stands for locked in, but it also stands for life. In other words, a lifetime income. That's the issue that you run into. Okay, so I hope that worked. Question 5. Okay. So you're welcome, Abdul. 10 years ago, Holly invested. So once again, I'm going to give you a moment to read that. Okay, so 10 years ago, Holly invested $100,000 in a segregated fund that has 100% maturity as well as a death benefit guarantee. So when the fund matured due to market conditions, the fund held $90,000 in account. So 10 years from now, her $100,000 was reduced by down to $90,000. So even though the value was less than her original investment, Holly expected the market to normalize and the value of the fund to go up. She decided to renew her contract for another 10 years. Is Holly entitled to the guaranteed top-up renewal? If you remember when we did the session on this guarantee thing, we said to you that if there is a guarantee, if the guarantee is less than in this case here, 100%, then the insurance company has to top up the difference. If the amount of money is greater than the guarantee, then the guarantee is zero. Okay, you don't have to worry about it. So if it's greater than 100%, then this issue would not happen, so the guarantee would be zero. But because of the fact that in this case here, the actual amount is 90,000, in other words, it's less than 100%, then the guarantee is 100%. And so therefore, as a result, the insurer, and yes, the insurer will deposit the top-up guarantee amount into her account. So in other words, when she decides to roll over the $90,000, the fact is that the insurance company has to top it up in $10,000 because that's the guarantee. So she starts all over again with $100,000. Okay, so simple as that. So if the guarantee is a guarantee, and so therefore, if it's less than the guaranteed amount, in this case 100%, then the insurance company has to top up the difference. If it is more, so in this case here, let's say it was $110,000, then the guarantee is zero. So the insurance company doesn't have to top up anything because it's already above the guarantee anyway. So in other words, the insurance company doesn't owe you anything in that point. So the only time they have to top up is when the amount is below the guarantee. So whether it's below 75% or in this case below 100%, then they would have to top up. But if it's above 75 or above 100, then the guarantee is zero, which means then they do not have to top up anything. That is very well explained in chapter 2 of the book. Second one is chapter 2 of the book, section 1.1. Section 1.1 describes what happens in the event that the amount of money is actually less, and of course more, than the guaranteed amount. Let's move on to number 6, and what we've got is Nancy. Okay, so we've got here is Nancy, who's the named beneficiary on her father's segregated fund contract. As her father, John, does not require the funds, in other words, he doesn't need the money. He tells her that she can assume that the funds are for her use. In other words, she's going to be the beneficiary, basically, okay? But when John's health deteriorates, he appoints his brother, Jack, as the power of attorney. So remember, when you appoint somebody a power of attorney for your wealth, then Jack now has all the power. And so he appoints Jack's power of attorney for his financial affairs, including his segregated fund contract. So the contract matures tomorrow. Who can make the contract maturity claim? So because Jack now has the power of attorney for financial affairs, that basically means that Jack now is in control of that segregated fund. And so therefore, the only person that can make any kind of changes whatsoever is in fact Jack, because he has the power of attorney. Remember, his health has deteriorated. That means he's not able to make decisions on his own. That's why he's given that power of attorney to Jack. So now, despite the fact that Nancy is the named beneficiary, but who controls the policy now is Jack, because that's the power that he's been given over financial affairs. So Nancy, because she's the beneficiary, would be wrong, because Jack could turn around now and say, no, you're not going to get that money. The money's going to be used for your father. I'm going to cash it in to take care of your father. In other words, he can do whatever he wants, okay? So the correct answer is, because he has been given the power of attorney, is Jack, and that is on chapter chapter 6 or book number 6. Okay, chapter 6, section 4.0. Section 4.0 is where we talk about that kind of a situation there. Okay, the power of attorney and so on and so forth. Okay. And by the way, I should tell you that we do talk about power of attorney a lot more next week when we talk about ethics. Power of attorney comes up again, so you'll be hearing about this a little bit more later. Let's move on to number 7, and we've got Rachel. Okay, so Rachel, she wants to know the difference between a guaranteed minimum withdrawal benefit and a guaranteed lifetime withdrawal benefit payments. So let me explain first what guaranteed minimum withdrawal benefit is. What it basically is that a guaranteed minimum withdrawal basically guarantees payments for a fixed period of time, fixed number of years, basically. So for example, you can buy a guaranteed minimum withdrawal benefit for 20 years. So it's like a term certain, so to speak. It's that you have an annuity that guarantees you a minimal amount of money that you can withdraw, let's say 5% every year. So despite the market conditions and everything else, you can withdraw at least 5% year by year by year for the next 20 years. Okay, so basic guarantee minimum withdrawal, make guaranteed payments for a fixed number of years. So it's very similar to a certain annuity. A guaranteed lifetime withdrawal benefit is like life annuity. In that here, what happens is you're going to get a certain amount of money every single month, a year, however you want to design this, for the rest of your life. In other words, it is basically a lifetime. So guaranteed withdrawal benefit makes guaranteed payment for lifetime of the annuity. So it becomes like a life annuity, basically. So basically what we're saying is that because the payments for a guaranteed lifetime withdrawal may be going on for a long period of time, there's certainly going to be less money per month, let's say, than you will get in guaranteed minimum withdrawal, because that is only giving you money for a fixed period of time, 20 years, 15 years, whatever. Okay, so there it is right there. Okay, so the difference between is the guaranteed minimum withdrawal benefit payments would be larger amounts for each payment, because it is going to be able to pay only for a fixed period of time. So think of the term certain annuity. Okay? Whereas a guaranteed life withdrawal benefit basically says you're going to get a check forever and a day. And as a result, the amounts of money will be less. Again, it all depends on market conditions and all that sort of stuff there. But that's the fundamental difference between those two components, okay, of two different kinds of products. These are very popular plans, by the way. So you should become familiar with these. So this is on chapter 2. Chapter 2 and section 1.4 is what you're going to be looking for. Is chapter 2 1.4, where they discuss this at length. Let's go on to chapter 8, and we got Tony. So once again, I'll give you a moment to read that. Okay, so what we've got here is Tony runs a corporation with 60 employees. The corporation offers a defined contribution pension plan to its employees. Tony wants to know if there are any group plans that he can offer for the benefit of his retired employees, which will assure them that they do not have to go it alone when they retire. Having to decide what they can do with their retirement savings accumulation. In other words, what he wants to do is to provide some kind of an additional benefit when in not only from the defined contribution plan, but once these people retire, can he provide something additional as assistance to his employees? So what do you suggest? What you suggest is you can buy a group LIF. Remember, LIF is a locked-in fund. Locked-in fund. Remember that I said to you before, that if you have money in defined benefit pension or defined contribution pension, it must go into a locked-in vehicle. So it goes into a LIRA. The other place it can go into, of course, is a LIF. And that L, once again, stands for two things. It stands for life income. It also stands for locked in. So therefore, the money can go into a group LIF. So you can buy an individual LIF, but the cost may be a little bit higher. The returns may not be as good. The expenses may be a little bit higher because it's one individual plan only. So what Tony is saying, is there something else I can offer my employees where I could offer that so they can lower those costs, basically? Or it may be because it's a group, so we have a larger pool of money, maybe they can get a better return for my employees and everything. So a group life income fund is a very good vehicle if you want to continue on maintaining sort of the homogeneity of a group. This is, once again, I draw your attention to chapter 8. And you see chapter 8 shows up a lot. So chapter 8, and that is discussed on section 2.0. So chapter 8, 2.0 talks about this particular subject and everything. Okay, let's go on to the next one, page 9, and we got Penelope. Okay, so we got Penelope here. It's got $500,000 accumulation that could provide her with a payout annuity of $3,000 per month. So that's what she's going to get for the rest of her life. Keep that $500,000 invested. She's going to get a life income of $3,000 per month for the rest of her life. However, she is concerned about the consequences of her annuity payments if the insurer were to go bankrupt. If Penelope purchased a life annuity with one insurer only, how much would she receive if the insurer were to become insolvent? If you remember, with any products that are sold by the insurance company are consumer protected by an organization called Assurance. So don't forget the company, an organization called Assurance. So Assurance will protect 85% of the covered benefit, no less than. So whenever you've got any kind of a monthly payment like disability insurance, or in this case an annuity, it will be 85% of the benefit, no less than $2,000. So in other words, up to $2,000, it's 100% guaranteed. Above that, it's 85%. So in this case here, Penelope can be assured that a worst case scenario, if the company went belly up, so to speak, she's going to get 85% of $3,000. So it's $2,550 per month. It's a worst case scenario that she's going to get. So it's 85% of the benefit, no less than $2,000. So in this case here, the $2,550 obviously is more than $2,000, so therefore she's going to get $2,550. Okay, so the bottom line is in fact basically $2,000. That's the bottom. But in this case here, it's 85% of $3,000. So that's the answer. Is that it's protected. All insurance products, all products sold by insurance companies are protected by Assurance. And Assurance is discussed at length in Chapter 3. Okay, Chapter 3, 1.5, Section 1.5. So Chapter 3, 1.5 talks about Assurance and how it protects annuity payments. For that matter, also disability. Anything that is a monthly payment, Assurance protects 85% of the benefit, no less than $2,000. And we have question 10, which we have Anna. So Anna invests her money primarily in GICs, guaranteed investment certificates. Okay? As her financial advisor, you advise her about the risks she faces with her investments. What are the risks that you explain to her with regard to her investments? Whenever you buy a product that is a fixed income, such as a GIC, an annuity, things of that nature the biggest issue you've got is in interest rate risk and inflation risk. Okay, and the reason for that is, what if interest rate change in the future? So for example, right now, let's say she invested her money GIC at 5%, let's say. Then 5 years from now, when she renews, let's say that the interest rate went down to 3%. So now, obviously, if she's used to 5, all of a sudden she's not going to get 5. She's only going to get 3. So you see, you got interest rate risk. The reverse is true. What if you bought an interest of 3%? Let's say she bought a GIC for 3%, and she bought a 5-year GIC at 3%. But next year, the interest rates go up to 5. She can't change it. She has to wait for the 5 years before she can roll that money into a new investment, because she's locked herself in for a period of time of 5 years. So therefore, interest rate risk is a major problem whenever you have any kind of a fixed income security, such as in this case a GIC. The other issue we have, of course, is inflation risk. Yes, $5,000 right now sounds like a good chunk of money. However, 10 years from now, $5,000 may only buy $4,000 worth of goods. And so therefore, the earnings and the earning power, the power basically purchase power basically is severely impacted by inflation. And so the two things that you have to remember about any kind of a fixed income security, be it an annuity, be it a GIC, any of these things, is interest rate risk and inflation risk. You do not have to worry about market risk. See, GICs and annuities are not market driven. Okay, they are interest rate driven and inflation driven. That's it. That's all there's to it. So there is no market risk. Okay? There's also no industry risk. Remember that when you buy a GIC, what you're really doing is lending money to the institution. They owe you that money. And so therefore that money is guaranteed. So you are a secured creditor basically. And that goes hand in hand, of course, with bonds and things of that nature there. Also, you don't have to worry about credit risk because even if the company's credit slumps, your money is still guaranteed because that's why they call it a guaranteed investment certificate. So you don't have to worry about any other stuff. You don't have to worry about credit risk, market risk, industry risk, none of that stuff there because it's a guarantee. But you do have to worry about interest rate risk and inflation risk. And that is very well discussed in Chapter 1. Okay, Chapter 1, 3.0, Section 3.0. So you need to go through that particular section. It gives you more information on this particular section. Let's go on to question 11, and we've got the market and industry risk. Market risk, a question on the audience is what's the difference between market risk and industry risk? Market risk is the TSX. In other words, basically what happens to the market. So if you look at every day, the market says TSX was up by 150 points, or the Dow Jones was up by 150 points, and Dow Jones was below. So market risk is the risk that you take when you're buying stocks, equities, things of that nature there. Okay, so that's market risk. Industry risk is you bought basically a fund that is given to you by, let's say, GM, for example. That's an industry risk. In other words, it's a corporate situation, not a market risk. So you invested money into the industry itself. So you lent money by buying GM's, let's say, bonds or GICs, which they're allowed to issue. Okay, so they're allowed to issue, or you bought bonds from other institutions and everything. But because they are industry, they could go belly up. Remember that GM, Ford, Chrysler, they almost went bankrupt in 2008. And so that's industry risk. You see, it's not market. Market risk is stock market. Industry risk are the corporations that you buy your funds with, basically. Okay. Hope that worked. What was the reference on question 10? Well, question 10, it was a GIC, just a simply GIC. So there was no reference. So it just simply said GIC, and that's it. Okay. And so we have to assume here they bought the GIC from a reputable organization. So therefore, they don't have any issues with markets, and don't have any issues with the industry. Okay, I need to move on. So we've got Carl. Carl has accepted your recommendation for investing segregated funds held in an RRSP. Remember that you can buy segregated funds unregistered, and of course you can buy non-registered, or you can buy registered RRSP. When Carl is investing, he's basically doing what? So when you buy an RRSP, what is very important to remember is that the owner and the annuitant have to be the same person. See, if a non-registered segregated fund or annuity, I could be the annuitant. In other words, I could be the owner of the contract, and my wife, for example, could be the annuitant. So in other words, you can have third-party annuities, just like you have third-party life insurance. You can have a third-party annuity or a third-party segregated fund. So if it's an unregistered segregated fund, I could be the owner of the segregated fund, and my son or my daughter or my wife, whatever it is, could be the annuitants. Okay, in other words, they're the ones that receive the monies and everything else. Okay? But when you buy a registered plan, there is no third-party registered plan. It has to be personal only. So in an RRSP segregated fund, the owner of the policy and the annuitant have to be the same. So in other words, it's me. That's it. I cannot own my wife's RRSP. I can only own my own. I cannot own my son's RRSP. I can only own my own. Okay. And so that's the key element. Is that in an RRSP, both the owner and the annuitant have to be the same creature. Whereas non-registered money, the owner could be somebody different, and the annuitant could be somebody different, and it will be just fine. Okay, but when it's an RSP, it has to be the same. And that is discussed quite extensively in Chapter 6. Okay, Chapter 6, 2.0 is where you will find information about ownership of RSPs and non-RSPs and things of that nature there. Okay, so let's go on to question 12, and we've got Tina. So once again, I'm going to give you a moment to read that over. Okay, so Tina is your new client, and you review her investments and you determine she's invested her money into GICs, government bonds, registered retirement savings plans, and non-registered, both registered and non-registered accounts. Okay, she is employed and lives with her within her means. She has no outstanding debt. She is not happy as her investments are not producing the returns that she requires to have a decent retirement. What do you conclude has been your investment objective up to until now? In other words, based on everything you see inside here, what are her objectives? So if you look at that very carefully, you'll notice that it's safety of principle. When you look at this, you say, well, you got your money in GICs, that's pretty safe. Government bonds, that's pretty safe. And she's living with her means. She has no debts of any kind. So basically, she is a very, very, very conservative individual. And so therefore, because she is so conservative, she's not going to make much money. So safety of principle is her primary objective here based on this year. So if she wants to make more money, she might have to turn around and take a little bit of risk. So in this case here, she's not looking at growth. Her portfolio at this point is not growth oriented. Certainly it's not tax advantaged, because remember, with GICs, you pay your taxes immediately, basically. Okay? And so therefore, there's no tax advantage here. If she casts in her RSP, it's all 100% tax, so that's not going to be an issue. And income generation, well, she's already told you she's not happy with her investment returns, and so concerned that she may not have enough money in retirement, you see. So the problem here, what I see here in this question, is that she's too conservative. In other words, she's so concerned about saving every dime that she's forgotten about growth. And she's not willing to take any risk, basically. So Tina, in this case here, is not used to risk. She doesn't like risk. She's very, very conservative. Okay? So this is discussed at length in Chapter 1 and in Section 1.2. Basically, Chapter 1, Section 1.2 discusses this issue of being conservative or not, and the safety of capital, and so on and so forth. So let's go on to number 13, and we've got Jordan. So Jordan wants to invest in a group registered retirement savings plan, a group a group registered retirement savings offered by his employer. The employer offers a choice of segregated funds. So that's the underlying security, okay, segregated funds. He explains to you the reason why he thinks this option is good. Which of the following requirements of his will not be met by investing in a group segregated fund? Okay. And so if you remember, two big things about a segregated fund on an individual basis was the maturity guarantee and the death benefit guarantee. Okay, so those were two big things. When you buy a group segregated fund, unfortunately, you lose the maturity guarantee. Okay, there is no maturity guarantee. And I should tell you, there is also no death benefit guarantee. So in a group RRSP, using segregated funds as the underlying security, there is no maturity guarantee and there is no death benefit guarantee. However, the good news about group segregated funds is there's no sales charge. Okay, there's no sales charge involved, because basically what happens here, the expense of running the show are basically spread out among the group and everything. So there's no sales charge. There is a lower MER, lower management expense ratio. Once again, because the risk is that much lower, we've got a lot of people that we putting their money into here, so they lower MER. So that's a good thing as well. There's also no switching fees. Remember that when you switch In an individual segregated fund, if you switch from one fund to another, it could be switching fees, it could be taxation, it could be that. But in a group segregated fund, you do not get a switching fee. So there's no sales charge, there's no MERs, no switching fees. Those are all good things. But what did you give up for that? You give up the fact that on maturity, there is no guarantee. So whenever you're ready to basically cash out, it is what the market will bear. So in other words, on here, there really isn't a 10-year maturity date. It just keeps on going and going and going. And so therefore, that 75% that we talked about on depth or maturity basically does not exist on a group or RSP with segregated funds as the underlying security, okay? Strongly recommend you make a note of that because they use a question on the exam on that particular area. It's just quite different, obviously, than an individual, RSP. And that is discussed in Chapter 8. There's Chapter 8 again, as you can see. Chapter 8, 3.1. Chapter 8, Section 3.1 talks about group segregated funds. Okay. Let's move on to 14, and we've got Travis. Okay, so Travis will be retiring soon when he turns 65 years old. He is a member of a defined contribution pension plan. He wants to choose a pension vehicle and has made up his mind to go for an annuity. His children are well established, in other words, well settled, and he does not have to leave them any inheritance. So there's nothing to worry about the kids. The kids are doing just fine. He estimates his and his wife's life expectancy is about 20 years. Okay, he estimates that both of them have about 20 years to live. Which annuity will give Travis the highest monthly income while meeting his life expectancy and other requirements? Okay, which annuity will give Travis the highest monthly income while meeting his life expectancy and other requirements? And the answer to that is joint and last survivor life annuity with a 60% at second death. So let me explain what that's all about. Okay. So he's got his wife, and he obviously wants to make sure that he and his wife always have an income for the rest of their lives, right? So what they do is they buy joint last survivor type of annuity. So that means that if Travis dies, his wife basically will be able to step into his shoes, and he and his wife will get an income for the rest of his life. So what they're concerned about is that they want to make sure that they get as much money while both of them are alive. And then when one of them dies, they don't have a problem with the survivor receiving a little bit less. And that little bit less is 60%. Okay? So in other words, in this case here, to get the maximum while they're alive, what we would recommend is that they buy joint last survivor with a 60% benefit on the second death. So his wife, let's say Travis dies, and his wife now inherits the money, but she will only get 60% of whatever they were entitled to. So if they were entitled to, let's say, $5,000 while they were both alive, now when he dies, she will get $3,000. So 60% of $5,000, she will get $3,000. If, on the other hand, they chose joint last survivor life annuity with 100%, then obviously it's going to be a lot more expensive. So you're not going to get the maximum amount of money while they're both alive. The amount of money will be reduced because should Travis die, his wife, of course, will continue to receive the exact same amount of money. Well, obviously that's going to be more expensive. So the end result is that they're not going to get as much money while they're both alive. So the joint last survivor with 60% is what you should recommend to them. When it says your joint last survivor annuity with a guaranteed period of 20 years and 60%, the problem is the guaranteed period. What that means is that if either one of them dies, in other words, they're both dead within the 20-year period of time, then the beneficiary will receive the exact same amount of money that they were receiving when they were alive for the balance of the 20 years. So in other words, that's 60%. Okay. So that $3,000 I was talking about. So let's say that they both died at 15 years. Okay, they both died. So Travis died in the 10th year, and his wife died in the 15th year. Now, his wife was getting $3,000, then she dies, and you have a 20-year guarantee. And let's say they left their son as a beneficiary, then that means for the balance of the 5 years, the son will get $3,000 a month. So obviously that's going to be more expensive. And obviously the most expensive is 20-year guarantee with 100% a guarantee benefit. That is going to be very, very expensive. And so the amount of money they're going to get while they're both alive with these guarantees is going to be quite high. So what we're saying basically, any kind of guarantees or 100% returns and all that will be very, very expensive. And so therefore they will not get as much money while they were both alive. So the correct answer here for them to have maximum amount of money while they're both alive is joint last to die policy with the 60% payment on the survivor. Okay, on the survivor, with no guarantees, no 20-year guarantees, and all that sort of stuff. Okay, that is discussed in Chapter 3 and subsection 2.2. So Chapter 3, subsection 2.2 will give you the information you're looking for in that particular situation. So let's go on to number 15, and we've got Gary. So this question actually piggybacks on the previous question, okay, the previous question of question 14. So Gary was receiving a monthly payment from a joint last survivor life annuity with a 20-year guarantee period. His wife, Elaine, is the joint annuitant, and his son, Bruce, is the beneficiary. So if both of them die within that 20 year, his son, Bruce, will continue to receive an income for the balance of the 20 years. So Gary dies 8 years after purchasing the annuity, so he's dead. So Eileen now is the beneficiary, basically. So who can submit a claim to the insurance company with regards to Gary's annuity? In other words, who can continue on getting that benefit? And of course, it will be Eileen, because she is a joint last survivor. And also, she's still alive within that 20-year guarantee period, you see. So the end result is that Eileen is the one that would get the money. Bruce would only get the money if his mother died within that 20 years. So let's say that Gary died in the 8th year in this case, but in the 10th year, Eileen died. That means that for the balance of the 10 years, because there is a 20-year guarantee, the son Bruce will receive the exact same amount of money as his mother was getting for the balance of that 20 years, whether it be a 60% or 100% guarantee, whatever. Okay, but in this case here, Eileen is alive, and so therefore, the only person that can put a claim against that annuity, against Gary's annuity, is of course Eileen, and so she would be the one that will get the funds stream. That is discussed at length in Chapter 7. Chapter 7, 4.2 is where you're going to find information on joint last to die policies and everything. So go to Chapter 7, and it's subsection 4.2. Let's go on to 16, and this is a little bit long, so I'm going to give you a few extra moments to read this over. Okay. So Stan owns a mutual fund investment, which currently holds $200,000. He plans to set up a systematic withdrawal plan of 5% of the balance per year. His wife Jen owns the segregated funds. She has a guaranteed minimum withdrawal rider, which guarantees a withdrawal of 5% of $200,000 for 20 years. So Stan wants to know the advantage of a guaranteed minimum withdrawal benefit that Jen has over his systematic withdrawal plan. So basically what it's saying is they both have $200,000, Stan is going to get a systematic withdrawal plan. And Jen is on the other hand, she's going to basically buy a guaranteed minimum withdrawal benefit, okay, for 20 years at 5%. So the correct answer here is Jen is guaranteed a payment of minimum of $10,000 for 20 years, provided she does not make any excess withdrawal account. That's why we call it a guaranteed minimum withdrawal. So if you gave me $200,000 and I'm going to give you 5% per year, then obviously I'm going to give you a minimum of $10,000 a year for the next 20 years. That is 100% guaranteed, provided, of course, you don't ask for any more money. Remember, you can always ask for more, but then that may screw up the 20 years. In other words, money may run out before the 20 years is up. Okay. Whereas B is not correct because the payout amount is not recalculated every year. You don't. Once I've guaranteed you, unless again you take out too much money, but if you let's leave it alone, and every year I send you a check for $10,000, let's say in this example, then we do not recalculate anything. Okay? The guaranteed minimum withdrawal payment of $10,000 a year is guaranteed, even if Jen makes additional withdrawal. No, that contravenes, of course, the whole concept of guarantees, in that the only way I can guarantee you for that 20 years is that if you don't make additional withdrawals. In other words, this is what we guaranteed, $10,000. If you decide to make a higher amount, in other words, you need $12,000, then the guarantee is wiped out. In other words, I may run out of money before the 20 years are up, so therefore that may not work. Okay, the guaranteed minimum withdrawal benefit is the same as the systematic withdrawal. No, systematic withdrawal basically means that a Stan could basically say, look, send me a check for $2,000 a month, for so many years. What if there's no guarantee? What if the money runs out? In other words, it's not a guarantee. Basically, send me a money for as long as the money lasts, and that's it. So you see, and the other thing is that what if the market tanks? Okay, the market tanks, and there isn't that much money, and now the systematic withdrawal plan is shot to pieces because there's no guarantee. You see, so it goes according to market conditions. But with a guaranteed minimum withdrawal plan, even if the market tanked, the insurance company is saying, no, we have guaranteed you that for the next 20 years at 5%, we're going to send you a check for $10,000. So the absolute worst case scenario is the market tanks, you're still going to get your $10,000. If the market exceeds, we may be able to send you more. But if the market really doesn't do anything, the worst case scenario is you're going to get $10,000 a month. Whereas with systematic withdrawal, you may run out of money, okay, because it's not guaranteed. Also, if the market tanks, well, then there may not be any money left to give you, because again, I'm not going to give you any kind of guarantee whatsoever. And so you have to look at those kind of things. That is discussed in Chapter 2. Okay, Chapter 2, 1.4 is where that information is discussed. Okay. So let's go on to question 17, and we've got Robin. Okay, so Robin is saving for making a down payment for his first home outside of his registered retirement savings plan. He also regularly contributes to his RSP and also wants to make use of his home buyer's plan withdrawal to fund the down payment for his new home. What should Robin's objective be for investments that he's making to fund the down payment? Now remember that he's saving money two ways. He's saving money outside of the RSP, and he's also saving money inside the RSP, so because he wants to take advantage of the home buyer's plan in his RSP. So obviously, because he's saving money for a very short space of time, then it's very, very important for him to take a look at safety of principle. In other words, this is not a long-term investment, and so therefore he's got to be very careful because he has a very specific objective. The objective is he wants to have a reasonable down payment to buy a house. That's his objective. And so because of that, because it's a very fixed amount that he wants to have a certain amount of money for his to buy his home and everything, then basically safety of principle is very, very important. Because if he said, well, 5 years from now I want to have X dollars for my for a down payment, then obviously he doesn't want a growth fund, which could, yes, it could grow up, but it could also increase substantially, but it can also decrease substantially, right? He's not looking at income generation. In other words, I don't need the money right now. I want to save my money for that eventual time for me to buy my house. And I'm not concerned about tax saving because if I have to pay taxes on my growth, that's fine too. Because my objective really is I want to have enough money at the other end to be able to afford to buy my house. In other words, a down payment on my house. And so therefore, in this person, because it is a short-term type of thing, it's safety of principle is the main thing that is a motivator for this for Robin. It's safety of principle, and that is discussed in chapter 1. So chapter 1, section 1.2 discusses this particular section. So write that down. Chapter 1, section 1.2 is where you get that information. And question 18, we've got Maria. Okay, so Maria has a guaranteed lifetime withdrawal benefit plan that guarantees her amount of $1,500 per month for the rest of her life. An unexpected event occurred in Maria's life, and she needs to withdraw more than what she is already receiving from her guaranteed lifetime withdrawal benefit. Which of the following statements is true? So remember, we have guaranteed her that as long as she doesn't take out any more money than the $1,500 a month, then she will receive that $1,500 for the rest of her life. The fact that now she had an unexpected event, now she has to withdraw more money, that's going to cause a real problem. And Maria can withdraw an additional amount from the guaranteed life withdrawal plan, but the guaranteed lifetime payments will be lowered as a result of the withdrawal. In other words, she's got less money sitting in the pot, you might say, and that, of course, then they're going to have to recalculate the amount, basically. And so instead of the $1,500, for example, she may only now get $1,200 for the rest of her life. And that's why when you buy these kind of things, whether it be a guaranteed minimum withdrawal or a guaranteed lifetime withdrawal benefit, once you start taking out more money than what you've been guaranteed, then you alter the plan. And so therefore you could run out a month sooner, or the amount of money that you're getting on a month-by-month basis will have to be adjusted downwards in order for you to make sure that that money is there for the length of time that you bought it for, basically. And that is discussed on chapter 2, 1.4 is the answer. So A is not correct because the guaranteed lifetime withdrawal payment are guaranteed for life, but Maria cannot make a withdrawal. That's not true. You can actually cash it in if you wanted to. So it's not that it's locked in money or anything. You can take out the money whenever you want. Maria can withdraw an additional amount of money, and the guaranteed lifetime will continue. No, obviously, if you're taking out more money, I can't afford to pay you $1,500 per month. You've altered the plan. There's not enough money sitting in the pot now. So therefore, I am going to have to lower the amount of money on a monthly basis. And C is not right because Maria can only withdraw an additional amount from the GLWB plan in a year when the market value of the plan increases. No, you can do it anytime you want. That's not an issue. Okay, that money is, like I said, is not locked in, so you don't have to worry about when you can do it. You can do it anytime you want. All I'm saying is that if you do take out money, then we will have to recalculate what we're going to be able to pay you on a monthly basis. So if you take out extra money, obviously that amount of money on a monthly basis will be reduced. Okay. So as I said, this is talked about on chapter 2, 1.4, section 1.4. Chapter 2 is where we talk about these particular kinds of plans. So let's go on to 19, and we've got Michael. Okay, so we've got Michael, a 70-year-old widower, who wants to use his RRSP money to purchase a life annuity contract with a 20-year guarantee period. If he dies before the end of the guarantee period, he wants the annuity payments to be paid equally to his only daughter. Okay, if his daughter predeceases him, Michael would like the annuity payments to go to his favorite charity. So in this case here, and it says, in Michael's case, what is not necessary to complete in the life annuity application. And what is not necessary is confirming Michael's identification. We already have that identification when the application is actually filed and everything else. So that's not an issue. But he does have to have a name of a primary beneficiary. In other words, in this case here, the beneficiary is his daughter. So he does have to name his daughter as the primary beneficiary. He must give the insurance company the social insurance number. You cannot have an annuity without the SIN number, basically. So you must have a social insurance number. And also, because he's saying, if my daughter predeceases me, I want my money to go to my favorite charity, then he has to name a contingent beneficiary. In other words, the primary beneficiary is my daughter. But should my daughter predecease me, then I want the money to go to a charity. So therefore, he would have to name a contingent beneficiary to make sure that the money goes directly to that beneficiary. Okay? And so therefore, that is discussed in Chapter 7. Chapter 7, 2.1 is the area that you need to read to discuss beneficiary designations and so on and so forth. So please look at that. So Chapter 7, basically. Again, you'll notice that certain chapters show up more often than others. Okay, so I draw your attention. Chapter 7, Chapter 8, it shows up quite a bit. So you really should spend some extra time reading that particular section. Let's go on to number 20, and we've got Miriam. So Miriam is a 60-year-old and retiring in 2 months. Okay, she's 60 years old and retiring in 2 months. To finance her retirement, she has a group RRSP, Group Registered Retirement Savings Plan, with her employer, and she also has an own individual Registered Retirement Savings Plan, and she also has a TFSA. Okay, so which of the following will be available source of retirement income in the first year Miriam's retirement? In other words, when she retires at age 60, what of these particular areas that she's got money in, which ones will give her an income base? Which of the following will be available source of retirement income in the first year of Miriam's retirement? And that is CPP, a RIF, and a TFSA. Okay, so in other words, at age 60, you can apply for CPP. The fact that she has an RRSP means she can start her RIF. Remember that the RIF can start anytime. You don't have to be 60, you don't have to be 65, you don't have to be 71, you can be 55. It doesn't really matter. A RIF can be started anytime you want. And the TFSA could start anytime you want as well. So at age 60, the only one that's a sort of an age restriction is the CPP. Okay, but all the other ones can start anytime she wants. Okay. A is not correct because while CPP starts at age 60, OAS starts at age 65, you see. And so therefore, that isn't right because she has to wait. And the question really is, which ones will give her a pension the earliest? So OAS, she has to wait till 65, so that's not going to work. Okay. C is not correct because LIFs have to start later as well. They usually LIFs start from 55 onwards. So theoretically, she could possibly, most LIFs really don't start until 65 or over, double pension plans and everything. Okay. So again, D is not correct because you got LIF and OAS. So therefore, the best answer, remember when you're doing multiple choice questions, they're always looking for the best answer. The best answer is CPP, GRIFs, and TFSA. And that is discussed on Chapter 4, Section 4.4, and also 4.6. So we discuss all of these plans in Chapter 4, Section 4.4, and Section 4.6. discusses the various different kinds. So there you'll get information on CPP, RIFs, TFSAs, and so on and so forth. Okay, let's go on to 21. And we've got Danny. Danny's 67, so I'll let you read it for a moment. Okay, so Danny's 67 years old and a recent retiree. He wants to ensure that he has income for life and wants to be protected against inflation. He estimates his life expectancy to be 30 more years. Okay, so he expects to live till 97, basically. And the cost of living is going to increase substantially during this period. So his concern is that he may run out of money, obviously. So because the longevity, he expects to live for 30 more years. He's also concerned about the cost of living, in other words, inflation. So he wants to make sure that he has adequate provisions and everything else for his old age. Which of the following is the most appropriate choice for Danny? In other words, if you have this situation, what's your best bet in terms of what would you recommend for him to buy? And the recommendation here is that, first of all, 50% of his money should go into life annuity. So let me stop there and tell you why. One of the things that we always recommend when we're discussing security and everything else in the old age and everything is that a person has a steady income and does not have to depend on the market. It's not concerned about market fluctuation, which he wants guarantees. And so therefore the guarantees basically will provide him with a lifetime income so that at the very least he has the three most important things that we as humans need. And what we all need is such shelter, food, and clothing. Those are the three things that as human beings we cannot do without. We need to live in some kind of an organization, whatever, a house, whatever, okay, because we have to have a place to live. We need food, obviously, and of course we need clothing. So a life annuity can be set up, 50% of his money can be buy a life annuity that would give him a steady income, let's say $3,000 a month, for the rest of your life, that kind of stuff there. So that way he is assured that a worst case scenario, he's always going to have at the very, very least $3,000. So he's not going to be sleeping on a park bench or something, whatever, in his later years. However, so that solves the first problem in terms of longevity. Okay, in other words, he's going to live for a long time, so longevity. So he'll always have that $3,000. The second part, of course, is he's concerned about the cost of living. So you can take 50% of the money now and put it into some kind of a balanced fund. In balanced funds, then, what they'll do is they go up and down according to market. So he may have an opportunity to increase his growth and everything else because over the long haul, balanced fund actually paid quite well. And so as a result, if he's concerned about living too long and therefore the cost of living going up, he may want to invest some money into a balanced fund, which will keep up with inflation, keep up with interest rates, keep up with the cost of living and all that sort of stuff there, keep up with the market basically, okay? And so